On this episode of Ask an Artist, I'm joined by Chris LeDoux, co-founder of Crafty Apes. Crafty Apes is a wildly successful VFX studio producing some really high-level content. They're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. Chris has become a great friend to ActionVFX over the years, so I'm really looking forward to chatting. In this episode, we'll discuss things like how to scale a VFX business, how to maintain healthy cultures while scaling, and really just how to take care of your people. You can find links to everything discussed in this episode in the show notes below or at actionvfx.com/podcast. So without further ado, let's get to the episode. Hey, what's up everybody? Luke Thompson from ActionVFX with another episode of Ask an Artist. Today I have a very special guest, Chris LeDoux from Crafty Apes Studios. What's up, Chris? How's it going, man?
How you doing, Luke?
Hey, doing well. Super excited to chat with you today. How's it going?
Good. I'm just playing around with, I got a subscription to that Runway website you did a video on. So
yeah, what'd you think?
I have a blast on there. I tend to have a few drinks and play with AI models quite a bit.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, there's so many different models on there, and for it to be such like an early stages thing too, I definitely see a lot of possibilities with that in the future.
No, I think it'll be one of those links that allows people that aren't, going to go through and program TensorFlow and PyTorch to actually access some of the, some of the tools people are developing. I like the fact you can host your own models, so you go into GitHub and grab stuff, and it's that nice link between super techie engineering where hardly anyone knows how to do it to where, it's like when the web first came out and, you were getting like AngelFire and GeoCities websites because only engineers could program stuff and everything was terrible.
Yeah.
And then once they made tools so that designers could take over, the web became, highly usable and exploded. But, machine learning right now is still very much in that engineering realm. So this feels like a step in the right direction. So the noobs can actually go play around and make stuff.
Yep. I love it. And yeah, like when that comes to just translating to where that helps alleviate mundane tasks and stuff in the future, like I think there's a lot of really cool possibilities. But right now I'm just like, ooh, I want to screw around with this and see.
No, I used it for a garbage mat on something the other day. I mean, the auto row is nowhere near usable for final, but for mock-ups and previs, post-viz, garbage mats, I was like, oh, this is nice. It's I wish they let me upload like, an EXR sequence versus like, what? Like, that sort of thing. But that's one of those things only VFX people think about EXRs. And like all these other softwares out there, like, where can I upload JPEGs? I'm like, oh man. Like,
yeah. Nice. Yeah, we've actually been nothing extremely public, but we have been working together with them on a couple things as far as trying to use some of our data sets to help them train new things coming down the pipeline. So I'm pretty stoked.
If you know them, I'd love to talk to them because I have a ton of ideas for how this could be a useful service for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
yes, sir.
It's pretty rad. I think it's definitely the proper step.
Nice. Yeah, I'll for sure shoot you an intro with them after this episode. So each episode of this podcast is really question centric, as I mentioned. And so, Chris, your question specifically for this episode is going to be, how do you stay creative? And coming out of that, kind of talk a little bit about the balances between, obviously you're directing, you're producing, you have a lot of different roles. And you're still compositing. And so how do you kind of balance that creativity between all of those roles?
Well, I think everything's project based for me. So I create projects and I create problems just to solve them. And so I might take on projects, that people are like, why are you taking this on? I'm like, well, because it's going to force me to develop this, this, and this. So it actually links over here. They're like, well, this, my bean counter might say to me like, the profit margin on blah, blah. I'm like, no, because you're thinking quarterly. I'm thinking long term that this is going to tie into all this stuff over here. So it's like, to me, and I wish I could say, well, I don't. Some people like to say when I say, oh, there's some tactical plan, it's a very generalized plan of like, if I try all these different things and I keep scratching my imaginative curiosity, while finding a way to deliver projects by giving, because I hack myself by giving myself clients a deadline. Because if I'm the client, it never gets done. But if I make someone else the client, it'll get done.
Yep.
So that's I hack myself in that sense. And I'll take on a lot of different things where I might composite, I might direct, I might produce, I might write. And so to me, I can't do everything. I used to try to specialize in everything and wasn't good at any of it. Now I've pared it down, but I want to at least understand what every role's doing. So it's like I might learn a little effects or a little animation, just so at least I can better talk about it, and I can better see how it fits in the pipeline, because the game is changing so much right now between machine learning, game engines, everything. There's a whole new way to rethink paradigms. And so to me, it's by giving myself a lot of different variety of projects, but making sure that I'm not the client.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I think that too probably plays into your leadership and helping you lead those artists with those specializations even better, when you kind of continually have that frame of mind of, because if you're in those seats, it's more of, oh, I can actually feel and relate more to what they're experiencing. So I think that probably lends itself to that.
No, people, I mean, if you think of art, artists will respect you way more. And you think of yourself. If I said, if you were, an effects artist, and as your boss, I came to you and was like, I just treated you like, do your clicky button thing where
do your fire, make it boom.
Yeah, your VDB, whatever, make it cool. And so, because ultimately on some level that feels like it's a disrespect of what we're doing. It feels like, it's because, you change your tone, it sounds highly respectful. Like you might speak to your brain surgeon, if you had a brain surgeon, and be like, all right, well, whatever you say, you're the, I don't want that.
Yeah.
But when you're supposed to be the manager or boss, it's your job to know what the hell people are doing. On some level, it's like, just animate that shit. You just got a couple keyframes, right? And it's like, they're going to look at it, like,
yeah.
And so you have to know, you have to be able to speak to what you're talking about. I think that's very important in our industry. We all worked for companies where there was, black turtleneck dude up top upstairs came down and just a tour and look around and be like, so what is it you do here? And like, oh, I'm the, the compositing supervisor. Oh, it's like compost? Like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
And,
he's like, I've done my good deed for the day.
Yes. It's like the
I visited the peasants down on the hill.
Yes, exactly. Like, the sharecropping proletariat has now been appeased. Like, what did you do to appease them? I gave them my presents.
I said hello.
Yes. Well, what? You think they like you? Oh, they love me.
It went great.
The coup. So it's like, I think that's part of being of that symbiotic relationship, between a company and the people that work there is to me, that's like bare minimum, is understanding the nuts and bolts. I'm not going to go like become an expert because I don't have time to. That's why they're there. Enough to where I can helps me respect their time. And that's one of the biggest things I would see at other companies which I had a great time at most companies. But when I did see problems, it was, some random producer would be like, well, we need this tonight. We told the client tonight. It's like, well, did you ask us how long it would take? Well, no. We're telling you it's due tonight. It's like, well, I guess,
see you next week.
Here's a tonight.
When this is done rendering.
Yes. Here's a tonight looking version. What do you think of that? Like, well, that looks terrible. Well, you should have asked how long it was going to take. So that, just like we're talking about balance, that relationship internally between, producers and artists, they need to understand more about each other. And the artist side, they need to understand more about producers, because, they would see them as like these just soulless project managers, but they don't realize that, hey, they might be on a call where the clients like basically like strip them down to nothing, hoping they were going to consume their children, and are in the process of doing a satanic ritual to make sure that they never reproduce again, and you've seen it. I mean, it's the dressing down or whatever. And so, producers in turn also need to understand more of the world from the client's point of view, and that every client has a boss. Even big directors, big VFX execs, producers, they have a boss. And a lot of them, I mean, I've been in rooms where I'm sitting there thinking like, someone will whisper to me like, man, the director's a dick, just being mean. And you're like, well, think about it. Like, if this movie doesn't do well, their career's over. Like, and if they don't get another movie to direct, how are they going to afford that apartment on Sunset Boulevard? And what the hell are they going to do? I mean, they'll be directing fertilizer commercials. Like, it's very much like that, where it's all about timing. If your first one's good, you could blow the next 10. But like, if your first one isn't great, man, like, I mean, it's just weird. I remember thinking back to like some of these movies where it was like $100 million budgets. And these directors right now, I'm like, man, they're probably like, I mean, they don't need other qualifications. What do they do? Like mow lawns? Like, what do they, that job skill doesn't apply anywhere else. Are they working in IT somewhere, or, do they get lower, I just don't know. And and that's the way it is. It's like, it's like football, it's like you see these guys in college that'll be like, on ESPN and all this stuff. And then 3 years later, they're out of the NFL. They've got almost no money, and so you're just like, they're just some working on it, wherever. And so it's,
Yeah.
very normal.
How does that happen?
Yeah. It's very few people get to be like, at that level. And so you have to understand each part of each human you're dealing with, what are their sources of stress and fear? Like if they're like really high strung, don't get me wrong, some people are just dicks. But that, honestly, I found it to be pretty rare for the most part. Usually there's some kind of outside agitating force. And so if you learn what's causing them stress, like what are they worried about? What's, and because I've directed, nothing big, but, enough to know like the pressure cooker of that seat is crazy. And the amount of people trying to talk to you on a daily basis is absolutely overwhelming. And you have to remember your place in the universe. Like in VFX, a lot of times, people think of what they know. So we think in VFX, like, for example, we might look at a green screen. We're like, well, why is it shot this way? There's like shadows on it and there's wrinkles over here. They would save a lot of money if they would just do this. And you're like, and it wasn't until I went on set that I can now retort to that and be like, all right, there's 2 shots in the sequence with green screens. Okay. And yeah, there's some wrinkles and stuff, but it's totally workable. The final is going to look no different. It was perfect. It's going to take an extra day. And what's an extra day? What is that, $1,000? Now on set, to make all that perfect would have been about 30 minutes. You know how much money gets burned up in 30 minutes on set? Like, I don't know how much. 30 grand. So guess what? No. You're going to fix it. That's why we're here. And so you get this like different point. And then, explain that to artists and they're like, oh, I never thought of that. Like, yeah, we're just one piece of the puzzle. And I mean, so this happened to me actually the reason I missed our last podcast, I was on a tech scout where they called me in, and without saying the name of the project or anything, because we haven't even started shooting yet, there's a mansion with a backyard, right? And past the backyard, we have to put a digital environment that, doesn't exist in Atlanta. And so I was looking at it and, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to need a blue screen, probably 60 feet wide to cover it. We're going to need 20 feet tall. And the key grip looks at me and is like, oh, and they start looking at it and they realize they can't get a scissor lift back there. They can't get a condor. There's no way they have to hang a truss, because the thing is at the backyard, it actually, here's the edge and it slopes down. So the green screen's got to be, they're like, they're looking at it and they're like, yeah, this is going to be like a few day build by hand. And we don't even know how we're going to do some of this. And I was like, well, hold on a second. Let's back up. And I like turned to the, the producer and the director. I'm like, are we going to have any extras or how many people are in this scene? They're like, 2. I said, how many shots? And I'm like, 2 or 3 in the cut. And I go, no blue screen, roto it. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I go, look, how much, I turn to the grips. I'm like, how much is it going to cost to mount all this stuff for days? They're like, $80,000. And I'm like, I was like 3 shots, roto, 2 characters. I'm like, are there any afros? Are there any curly hair? They're like, no curly hair, just all straight hair. I'm like, probably $500 a piece to roto this. I go, that's $1,500 versus $80,000 because, and with really good roto, I'm like, this will look the same. No one will ever tell the difference. With good compositing techniques and, like edge extend, it's stuff like that. I go, this is a no brainer. And so it's that kind of call that, I might have some artists or editorial or, well, why isn't there a blue screen here? I'm like, well, because there's 3 damn shots, man. And we agreed to roto. Yeah. And as long as you guys don't go crazy in the cut and give me like, 50 shots here, I'm looking at, the producer. I look at the producer. Look, down. This works. This is a complete no-brainer. And they're like, all right, we'll keep the shot count down. I'm like, no coverage. We're going to every shot's going to so, but that's an example of a good call on set. I'm with the green team. I'm with the line producer. I'm with everybody. And I'm like, no, this is going to save you way more money. Whereas I've seen a lot of people come on set for the first time in VFX, not knowing that it's a political job, thinking it's a technical job, and coming at it from such the five blind men and the elephant, coming from such that point of view, they're like, nope, it's got to be perfect, not realizing all the problems they're creating for the grip crew, and the producers, and just because no one knows VFX but us, they're at our behest. We're like the brain surgeons of set. Like nobody can argue with this because everyone knows what everyone else does. We've seen it for 100 years. Our stuff's like voodoo. And so they'll be like, well, do you need, you'll be doing like a car driving shot. And someone will be like, well, do you need to get an HDR? I'm like, no, it's just a straight comp. My reflections are on the reflection plate. I'm good. And they'll be like, well, the last guy would get an HDR for everything. I'm like, your last guy probably never composited, didn't know what he was doing. Or he was politically trying to control the set and just demanding things because he had gotten so many fights that were getting dated. But it's really important to understand other people's point of view, as always, and put yourself in their shoes and understand if you're getting pushback. A lot of times VFX and DPs will do this. And the reason is because DPs, they're in a hard position. Every day, their dailies are being looked at by the studio, being judged. And if someone doesn't like it, DP will get a call the next day like, why does this look terrible? Well, it's too dark. It's too this. It's too that. And so we're the one area they can't control. So when there's a blue screen there, a giant green screen, they're like, what's going to be out there? Like, I don't know, little Mars, what's it going to look like?
Yeah, where's it at?
I'm waiting for production design to give me like some inspiration or whatever. And they're like, and they want information so that they can create the best image. But we make them nervous because their image is now out of our control, or their control, sorry. Same as production designers. It's so, but I mean, the model, like I said, the paradigm's broken in a lot of ways where production designer will do all this work, design every bit of the movie, produce these incredible like books, like massive amounts of data and designs. And you get in the visual effects world, the production designer gone. Hey, what are we putting here? I don't know. Put a house that looks cool. Sweet. Production design. It's just, and they've lamented to me, the ones I'm friends with, they're like, yeah, it's so strange that we're not part of this process. Granted, they're like, I don't want to sit through post for 6 months, but at least consulted in some way. It's just because of the way the rules are with you're on this show and, the way the union rules were constructed, really theater 100 years ago, the production can't afford just to throw them on there for 6 to 12 months. It's like there's such little money as it is that it becomes really funny because the DP will come back in post or for DI at the end. And that's when they finally get to see everything. They're not showing them anything. It's just us, the director and the editor and a producer, and all these other people who you'd think would have input on what we're doing, gone. Not that I'm inviting more input because that would make it harder. I'm just saying something odd about the model in general, and that it's the more holistically we work together and understand the different visions. A lot of times production designers, for example, I ask give me your book, because I'll get the wrap drive and I'll look at your themes. I'm like, okay, so if I put a house in here, I'm going to stay with this theme. I'm not going to go mid-century modern when this is clearly a Victorian build, like that sort of thing. And yeah, it's very, very strange. It's funny though.
Cool. So congrats on 10 years at Crafty Apes. That is a massive accomplishment. And when I see like the scale that you guys are playing at in 10 years, I mean, that's a lot of groundwork, a lot of legwork that's gone into getting you guys as far as, in so many locations. Even in the past 3 to 5 years, you guys have really expanded your growth. So huge congrats on that, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, it's been a large effort by, a large group of people. And it's, what's cool is seeing, it's like Legos, you see this step led to this step, led to this step, it's like I built those Lego castles as a kid. It's like to actually see it happen. And you can go back and in retrospect, look at this step and this step, this, it's like good screenwriting, this, therefore this. And, to see a plan actually work, even though it wasn't like this, super detailed tactical plan, it was more of a general plan. And to see it actually work and, see collective efforts come together is, inspiring. You always wonder, it's like, I wish I could have been there at the pyramids to see how did this actually happen? How did people come together, and it's pretty amazing to see that over a long period of time, because it's not, usually people have a set goal, like, for example, build pyramid, okay, now we're done. But with this, it's sort of this, it goes on in some sort of theoretical perpetuity. How long will it go, and it keeps going. And that's what's exciting about it, is you have a general plan, but you leave yourself open for surprises. And it's like, if we do these things right, something interesting will happen. And that's kind of the entertaining part about it, is you never know what phone call you're going to get for what project, because this person talked to this person. And that's the kind of fun surprise you have every day. And and there's negatives. I mean, the render farm crashing is not a fun surprise, or something like that. But yeah, in general, that's really been exciting, is to think back when we had this idea 10 years ago that, hey, we should try this, okay, we'll see what happens. And to see it actually coalesce into something is, I'll admit it's not, I'm not going to say I'm surprised, but I am emotionally, I'm surprised. Like, well, I didn't expect this. And so.
Yeah, I was going to ask if that, like, where you're sitting now if that was kind of where your headspace was 10 years ago, when it was like, did you think, hey, maybe it could be at this scale, we could play at this level as far as scalability and all of that? Or was that kind of like, we'll kind of feel it out and see how it
I
goes?
think if you would have talked to us 10 years ago, I remember talking to one of my partners 10 years ago, and it was like, oh, we'll stay sort of boutique, we'll go never more than 15 or 20 people. And I think, part of that is, it's very daunting because now we're at, over 250 people. And so it feels very like,
Mm-hmm.
from that point of view, it feels intimidating. And in a lot of ways, it almost
Yeah.
feels, we might be able to sit there and be like, oh yeah, we could, I could do that or I could do this. But emotionally, it almost feels out of reach. It's like someone said, okay, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to get to this size and this, scale with this many people and this much revenue and this many types of projects. It
Yeah.
feels like, well, that's kind of crazy. And then you're like, well, no, somebody did it before me, and somebody will do it after me.
Mm-hmm.
So why not? But to actually see it come together really does, it truly takes a collective effort. And it's really hard to get people working that closely for so long on the same page. Is something I've learned is, my partners,
Yeah.
Jason and my brother, Tim, and then that's who we started off as our trio. And, we've added people since then, but to actually be able to get along for that long and work together. I mean, that's why so many great bands break up is eventually, ego gets in the way or, desire to do something else. But we kept it together and that's, and it's, generally been very pleasant. I mean, yeah, there've been knockdown, drag out fights and arguments over strategy or execution, of course, but the, that's what's interesting is the longevity. It's, I'm learning, you learn things on one level when you're younger, then that mean a lot more to you emotionally when you're older, and they sort of dig down deep into your soul at some point. And so, what I'm learning is how, when they say like whoever gets off the mat the most is the one who wins in the end, and that's true. You'll get knocked down
Mm-hmm.
1,000 times, and it's it really is that perseverance and longevity is it's like, hey, we're still here. And I think it's weird because I still remember my mentality when I was an artist, in LA. And I think of all these companies that, I'm like, oh, those guys do amazing work and, this. And then now it's like, I'm like, wow, we're like 5 times bigger than all these people, that I used to think of,
Yeah.
it's like, wow, that, are we going to get to that level? And that's what's interesting
Mm-hmm.
is, you start to
That's so
approach,
cool.
and you're seeing the scale of clients you're working with. And, it's, but scalability it's odd. It changes things. And what gets you to one scale doesn't necessarily get you to the next scale. And you have to remember that because people always lean back on that. Well, this is what we've been doing. And it's like, yeah, well, that's when
Yeah.
we were 10 people, and now we're this. So we have to implement this step in the pipeline. And I think, that's been one of the harder things mentally is I've always hated bureaucracy. I want point A to point B, that, you realize that, yeah, for you individually, for an individual project, that may be true. But when you scale things, like I can't go in a 10-person company, I could talk to everyone every day for a lot. With 250 people, a lot of them will spend their entire time here and be gone before I've even known they were here. And it's unfortunate to say, but with 7 locations with COVID, I can't travel. So it's almost impossible. You can't physically, time-wise connect with that many people. And so that's one of the strange things is when people add me on LinkedIn, I'm like, who's this? I'm like, oh, they've worked here for 6 months. Like, oh, geez. That feels, it feels wrong to me on some level, but it feels odd. But I understand that it's, what else can you do? No, I
Yeah.
have to get work done and I can't necessarily like be on, just on call, there's other people that fulfill these roles. And so as you get bigger and you have to give up these things you used to control, some of them I don't mind. Like I used to have to cut our demo reels, which I hated doing. And like now there's someone who does that. And like this, it's like, wait, I'm no longer in charge of the Google email. Like, oh no, like wait, I don't want to be in charge of that. Like that's not. And
No.
so that's the weird part about scalability is really you're learning to let stuff go and then learning to like where should I focus on because
Yeah. Yeah.
it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, what brings you to level is like I'm a good compositor. Oh, good, you're now in management. Like, wait, do these things have anything to do with each other? No, they have absolutely
Yeah.
nothing in common with each other. Like, and so it's weird. I was like, yeah, it's not like in football they make the best players coaches. I mean, they're always terrible coaches, and like it's a totally different skill set. So learning how to manage people and you've learned to become an expert on nuke nodes, and that doesn't translate to someone in your office arguing about like
Yeah.
the music that's on the Amazon Alexa on the floor. You're like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And one thing you said really jumped out to me as far as I feel like that's something we say quite a bit when it comes to, I think, a level of complacency that can come with success. You know, it comes to, hey, I've made it to this one level and hey, I can just do that. And some people will kind of get into this mindset that they can coast almost of like, hey, we have the success, you know, we've worked on these level projects, whatever. But we always say that like who we are isn't who's going to get us to where we need to go. You know, and in the same way, like our systems, our processes that got us here aren't going to get us to where we need to go. And so I think it's always having that innovative mindset that's willing to say, hey, this has worked for us in the past, but now it might be time to kind of move some things around. But yeah, like you said, I mean, even shifting roles from artist's point of view into managerial and kind of that whole shift that has to take place of like dealing with nuke nodes and then employee emotions and, you know, trying to balance and like lead people well, I would imagine would be a challenge, especially at the scale of 250 people. Because I've felt that even from, you know, 2-3 people all the way up to we're in like the 15 ballpark right now. And even those changes from 0 to 15 have been night and day. So I can't even imagine the amount of notches that kind of take place between 15 and 250.
No,
That's
it's
insane.
it's different. I think because we came off the box as artists, and we still are. You know, I've Nuke open right now, but like you know, because we're still there, you want to keep that. There was a certain culture we wanted to build, and we don't want it. We don't
Mm-hmm.
want to lose that, and that's important not to lose it because the you want to build a place because you know you hear VFX artists. You know, I was in the trenches for years, so I know the concerns. I know that you know it's an industry ripe for abuse and to take advantage of people, and it's so you want to build a place that people want to be at where they're not taken advantage of, not just not feeling taken advantage of, like they're literally not taken advantage of. And so what I, you know,
Yeah.
and that's trying to keep that culture fresh is really, you know, that's where it's tricky because you do that through direct human contact. And so that I do the people, at least in my immediate office, because we're at that scale now. Where, you know, luckily we have there's partners, and so you know we're in charge of different areas or regions. And you know, Atlanta, you know, I try to keep you know that as fresh as possible. You know, and you know give people you know quick phone calls to like ask them how they're feeling or you know connect with them and you know hear their point of view on the world and make sure they don't you know they're not taken advantage of and make sure they feel they're not taken advantage of. And so you know, because it is hard. It's a hard industry, and if done right, it's gonna be a very pleasant experience for people. And so that's what I never want to lose is because I'd worked at big companies where you know no one knew who you know I was or cared, and so you know you do try at least on a local level to reverse that and to
Yeah.
make sure no, there's an opportunity for you to be heard here. Like you know, we give a shit, and this is not you know if don't be afraid to say something. You know, I'm a human being, and so that's why you know, that's why I still dress like crap. You know, it's still like, you know, I'm still dressed like a 20. You know, it's because you don't I remember being at a company that was large where, you know, the head guy was the, you know, let's just say he's the black turtleneck type. And I don't think it ever comped a shot, didn't even know what we did. You know, we were just we were numbers and beans in a jar. And I remember how that felt. It was like a comedy trope. You know, it felt like, you know, we were just these, you know, corporate stooges. And, you know, I believe in a very holistic existence where everything's connected and all the parts fit together. So I'm, the company is only as successful as, you know, you know, the soldiers, the artists, you know, it's not about me. You know, when it's 5 people, yeah, you know, as an individual artist and student, yeah, my value is very high. But, you know, at this level, you know, it's more about keeping a team together, making sure people are taken care of so they can provide them the opportunity to do their work well. And, you know, I think that's what makes you successful. And then, you know, then there's the other side of it, which is, you know, the client management and all that, which, you know, a lot, you know, they don't, when you're on the box, you know, they don't teach you about that, you know, and then you go on set for the first time and you realize like, well, that's why the blue screens always look weird, you know, and aren't shot right. There's only 10 minutes to shoot
Yeah.
this. You know, that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, everything on some level is five blind men and the elephant. And eventually you get all these different perspectives from owner, artist, you know, setsu, producer. And like one of my buddies came with the word, you know, I just started calling myself a producer visor. And because you're wearing all these hats and, you know, doing these things. But for someone like me who's super ADHD, you know, new experiences are constantly, they're interesting. You know, that's what I like about it is every day is different. Every project has completely different problems to solve. and obstacles to overcome. And that's ultimately what I find interesting about the industry is it's a problem solving industry. So you get to feel like MacGyver every day.
Yep. No, that's great. I think it really says a lot too about, your company's leadership having that artist focused approach. And I really have a lot of respect for like putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to saying, hey, we're going to do our best to take care of the people that we have. And I think that really shows through your artists. Like anybody that I've talked to that's worked for you guys has always had very, very positive things to say. And I think in an industry, as you said, that's kind of ripe for the abusing potential, unfortunately, whether that's like, hey, you're going to work on this huge film and that will be so good for your career. So we're just going to drain the life out of you.
Credit.
Yeah. But I got that IMDb credit. So
can I buy food with credit?
Yeah. It's like, wait, yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. So I think that's been really cool to see, just kind of my perspective outside looking in with you guys and how you operate as a studio. So I think high marks for that.
No, I appreciate it. I think, when it's all said and done, I'm retired or a meteor hits me or God knows what, I think there is a lot of value in, in a simple way of saying it, you have to sleep at night. And, I think culturally we are going through a bit of an enlightenment and a revolution where people are realizing that there's intrinsic value to right and wrong. It's not about whether you get caught. It's not even about karma, like, oh, it'll affect you in the end. It's more like things should be done simply because they're right. And treating people, putting yourself, one of my jobs I feel is to put myself in other people's shoes. So if you're Luke Thompson, compositor, it's what something I ask everyone that I interview. I'm like, what is your dream? What is your goal? Which leads to a hilarious host of answers because, some people take they'll take these generic sort of interview courses beforehand, everything's different, but, here's what to say in an interview to impress the guy. And so they'll be like, I just, all I want to think about is, Crafty Apes and doing the best job I can here. I'm like, oh, really? When you were 6 years old, you had a childhood dream. You thought of a company that didn't exist and a guy that you didn't know. And you were like, man, I can't wait. Come on, man, don't bullshit me. Like, the actual dream. It says,
and then they start sweating bullets. They're like, oh my gosh, this is over.
No, and that's the thing is, there's not a wrong answer. It's someone says, and some people say, look, I want to be the best compositor in the world. I'm like, okay. And like nothing beyond that. They're like, no, I never want to get in management. I'm like, you're very smart. And some people say like, oh, I want to be an amazing VFX supervisor. Some people say I want to be a director. And the thing is, if you provide the opportunity long term, if I have that in the back of my head, knowing that Luke Thompson, that's where he wants to get to, then I can provide opportunities. And I can say, look, here's the right path if you want to go. Because a lot of times what people think they want and when they actually get there are two different things. And I tried to play rugby one time. It turns out I did not want to play rugby. And so but you have to give people the room to spread their wings and explore. And I think that's part of being a good company is it's not just like, I pay you, you move bricks, set bricks down, go home. It's like, I think it's more than that because based on the amount of time we'll spend at a company in a week, let's say you spend 40 hours, 45 hours, whatever, of a week, which, a week has, 168 hours in a week. And so if you're spending nearly, let's just say 25% of your time, which if you throw sleep in there, let's just say we're down to like 110 hours of waking hours, almost half your waking hours are spent working. And so based on that environment has to be more than just a very simple transactional relationship. There's something more to it. And, it's not something you can easily quantify or, say, but if the more we do to make this enjoyable for you, because I think of the places I've worked where I had wonderful people around me that I loved. And at the end of the day, they were way more than just paychecks, and, the paycheck's, of course, part of it and should be done, properly. But beyond just the paycheck is, you need to install a place where people feel like they're contributing, they're a part of something, and that, ultimately what they're doing matters on some level. Obviously, despite what some people tell you, we're not curing cancer in VFX, and, some people take it way too damn seriously. But it is making a difference, in our world. And so it's like, we have to do a good job, provide profession. And so I think if you create an environment that fosters that sort of, that freedom, that's important, I think people, if no one's making mistakes and no one's trying hard enough, you have to take risks and you want people to know that, okay, you try this, it didn't work. Let's, like we're doing, our own machine learning research, I tell the guys, look, I'm expecting 99% of 100 things to fail. It's just that one that we need. And that's, which is really the entertainment part of it. And so I think, I think really the industry, anytime it's gotten a bad rap, I think it's, if you provide a good attitude and leadership from the top and let people know the environment that they're in is safe and that, they can explore and go where they want to go and it's encouraged, then I think you're going to have a better time.
Yeah. And that just continually fosters that growth mindset in individuals. And yeah, as you said, giving them the freedom to kind of explore and fail within safe boundaries, I think is a really important thing for any team environment to kind of grow and move forward with. So that's awesome.
Well, it's just like you were talking about with what gets you, when you when you rest in your laurels and you do what you've done in the past, you never grow. And so, but to get that next level, you have to try new things. And so, for example, let's do it for instance here. Because it's not hard to see this. Let's imagine, if we're talking about machine learning. Now, let's say that me and you think, okay, man, this is it's not there right now, but it's going to get somewhere, and it's going to be there. So we should start doing R&D right now. That's going to lead to, let's just say you can do stuff 5 times faster. Let's just say some given thing. Well, maybe in the past, this whatever task we're talking about was always done by some other piece of software, and it's proven. The thing is that if you don't do the R&D, what's going to happen is, for the short term, you're going to be more successful. If someone's trying to do this stuff, if someone burns money on R&D, your revenue, your EBITDA would look better. But then all of a sudden one day it's going to hit, and they're going to have these tools that are ready to go where they can do the job 5 times faster. And before you know it, you're just going to have the rug pulled from underneath you. Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to, and that's what's going to happen in some instances is all, and so risk taking and exploration, it's like in movies. That's why the most innovations come out of commercials and music videos, because movies and TV now have so much budget power behind them that they can't afford to take a risk, because if they fail, then there's massive punishment for the financial loss, which is what's happened creatively. Movies became such big financial vehicles and very corporate controlled that's why there's so many remakes, because no one gets punished for not taking a risk, which it really should be the opposite. You should be punished for not taking.
Yeah.
You're never not punished for taking. So that's why music videos and commercials, where they can afford, because their budgets aren't that crazy to begin with. They can afford. That's why you see so much innovation come out of those places. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with what we do is, I will take on a variety of projects from very high profile, to some lower budget and cheaper, strictly so that I can use them as sandboxes. We'll deliver knowing no matter what, I have the old way of doing things. I can always do that, and so the client's going to get a proper project, a good product and service. But as we go through this process, maybe it's a project that has a lower budget, but in return, I have a longer time frame. Now I can use this to innovate and experiment. I'm doing it right now. Awesome. Something I can't mention, but that is along that machine learning lines. And I'm like, wow, if I pull this off, it's a game changer. And that's where I think that's where we're at right now. That's so fascinating is we're at, now that what we're calling AI machine learning, which is kind of a misnomer in some ways, is calling highly trained models. It's going to allow for things that are very fascinating. And so, VFX has always been, just like culture, it's always dynamic. It's always in flux. It doesn't have a stasis. But this could be, if by the end of my career, I would say this could be one of the biggest changes that I've seen, over the course of my career. It's, oh, wow. And, things that these little tiny tasks that used to take so long. I mean, the idea of clicking a button, having roto happen is like,
fake.
Yeah, whether it's object identification or Z-depth combined with a database of object identification, or however they solve it. We talked about, for example, Z-depth in the lenses for years. We talked about man, this would be such, if paired with the right software, and now you're seeing it. Now you're finally my phone has it, with the time of flight thing on my iPhone. It's it's so exciting to see things that we used to, have drinks and theorize about. Wouldn't it be cool? And to see people actually coming out with these, and now we can, help develop some of them. And it's just it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's killer. And I think I have this natural nerdy inclination to always lead towards emerging technologies and innovative stuff. And I've been able to kind of put some end caps on that, because sometimes I'm just like, all right, I want to try this thing, whatever. And then I look up and it's been like 3 days. And I'm
Yeah.
just in this cave of something that's going nowhere. But if I'm able to put kind of these time constraints around it, like, hey, for 2 hours this afternoon, I'm going to dig into this other thing and play around with it. Yeah, it always, I think, is such a level of like healthy curiosity that leads to all those other discoveries of recognizing something and seeing, whoa, 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 like way over here in this other department for this thing that doesn't even relate. I can apply this principle or this software or this tool, whatever that I've learned. And being over operations as we've continued to scale, like that's something that I've definitely seen from that, which is pretty cool.
No, that's honestly what's, I think, one of the things that's become very undervalued in our culture, in my opinion, is imagination. And when your society gets, once again, scale, when your society gets to a certain size, in one dimension, conformity starts to be worshipped. In another sense, it's the opposite, because conformity is very important as a tribal group, for example, because if you're not all on the same side, that bear's going to eat you. But
Yeah.
or the woolly mammoth, whatever. But as things become more economically corporate, and there's this attempt to quantify every aspect of human existence into some kind of spreadsheet, which is absurd. But imagination becomes very discouraged, because imagination is chaos. Imagination is unpredictable, and it's very hard to quantify. And however, just because you can't quantify something doesn't mean it's not real and exists. It just means you can't figure out a taxonomy box to throw it into.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the heart of almost everyone I've ever met in VFX is an imaginative curiosity, which is what drives the best of us, where it's Trumbull or Dennis Muren or, Luke Thompson. It's like there's this desire to, like you said, apply things that shouldn't be thought of together. Like, what if you put this and this? And but really to solve a problem, and not just find a different way for the sake of finding a different way, but just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean that that's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I enjoy about it, is because, when philosophizing internally, we talk a lot of times about how education actually can be a bad thing for certain things, because another word for education is indoctrination. And what that means is someone's simply copying and pasting an existing paradigm over to you. And they're like, well, no, it's always been done. I mean, I'm sure this is how the farriers felt in 1900 as the internal combustion engine car came out. Like, what do you mean? Like horseshoes?
Yeah.
It's always, it's like you.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think guys like, Musk are very interesting, for car industry. A lot of times it has to be a complete outsider that has nothing to do with the industry that changes the whole thing, because everyone inside is so too close to it. Just like when you work out a shop for too long, you lose perspective.
Yeah.
That the paradigm's gone. And you see it in football sometimes, where everyone's running this offense. Some crazy guy comes from college with this other thing, like, no, we're going to pass the ball 5 times every drive. And they're like, that's madness. And it
worked.
The paradigm. Yeah. And so the concept of like paradigms needing to always be dynamic and changing, and you can never rest. And people are like, what do you mean you can never rest? I'm like, no, literally. But if you have this imaginative curiosity, you don't want to rest. Like you're talking about, you wake up 3 days later, like it still happens to me. It's been this way my whole life. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The only thing people that think there's something wrong with that are the people trying to force me into a normie paradigm. Like, no, you need to do this. No, I don't want to, go stay on your side of the fence. And so when you think of the powers of conformity and why they exist, because they exist for generally a good reason, to create, a civilization. No one's creating the pyramids without some conformity. But at the same time, which is a concept I wrestle with, is individual versus society. It's a classic story concept of mythology, and a lot of people obviously read, but you can never let one side win too much. And I think, the beauty of our industry is that there's those of us that want to feed imaginative curiosity, and there's people on other sides. I have friends that aren't VFX who are like, all I want is security, a 2-car garage house, 2.4 children, a wife who I'm convinced loves me, or a husband I'm convinced loves me. And I think maybe my kids see me a couple times when I'm old. I'm like, Gus, it's all planned out, very Calvinistic of you. And I'm horrified by that. I'm horrified by it. And but that's for me. I'm not trying to apply my chaos to them. But I think, for us, we have to, as you see more corporate money flow into visual effects, and you see more people try to rationalize it, we can never let the imaginative curiosity die or go anywhere. We have to have companies that pop up, that push the buck, that, that spirit that George Lucas had when he started ILM, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
that where we're problem solvers, we're finding new ways to do things. And so I think it's one of my jobs as an owner of a company that is to encourage that in people, and don't start putting little trackers on every shot. Like, I see you only did 3 monitor comps last week. And, yeah, people need to be productive. They need to do their job, but you have to stoke that imaginative curiosity at the same time. And I think I'll never shut up about it. Sorry.
No, that's really good stuff. And I think that is such an important thing that, as you said, it's a business, so it has to be efficient and profitable and keep that rolling. But I think that too often comes at the cost of the process itself, and just like enjoying, like, there's honestly some days where I'm building something and I have to just kind of step back and remind myself that, like, hey, this is an artistic thing. Because if it gets our position is quite different because it is building tools for studios. And I think that's why I love it so much, is I'm not necessarily locked in to, hey, I've got to be comping on the box or whatever. It's like I can buy 10 things on Amazon, play around with, see if that helps us like shoot or film products better. And so I think that level of curiosity always plays into that. But yeah, as soon as like corporate money starts flowing in, and as you said, it starts to have these different things kind of segmented off. And you see that with a lot of like company acquisitions and stuff, where they'll just be extremely corporatized. And I think there has to be balance there, because it is a business.
No, and a lot of times that capital and advice from corporate specialists can be helpful. You just can never, to me, it's about balance. It's like, you can, if you go too crazy on the imaginative curiosity side, you got a bunch of guys eating mushrooms, playing with paints, which is fun. But it's like, you won't actually solve any shots or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I used to be way on that side where I was like, I thought, producers were just glorified Excel users. And then once I started producing, I was like, so it's like balance. It's like, I think with like imaginative curiosity, like channeled into a certain thing, can be incredibly effective. Because I know people with just their pure imaginative curiosity that have never gotten anything done ever. Like there's 50 projects. There's always a big announcement, no result. And, and I tend to go towards that, where it's like, I'll finish things, but then I'm so much guilt over the litter of things in my life that are unfinished. And like, but at the same time, you go to the other side, which is just so like corporate, like, if it's not a finished product, it doesn't matter, and done the most efficient, like, okay, well, now we're never going to innovate. And so it's learning that balance and learning, what people, you have to speak a different language emotionally for every person you're dealing with. Like when I'm dealing with artists, some I can say a certain thing to, and some I can motivate with something else. And they're all different. They all, it's the vernacular I use is very choice. It's very selective, knowing that if I say something a certain way, I'm going to have an hour-long conversation about depth of field, which I don't want to have. And, so I think there's never any true rest. And the moment you intellectually rest is like, you're done at that point. You might as well go out to pasture. That doesn't mean you can't find time to recharge. But intellectually, you can never rest. You have to constantly be questioning what you're doing, which to me is fun. If I do things 3 times the same way, I'm bored. Can we find, maybe I'll try to do it in shake just for a challenge. And
just for crafts, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, does anyone have iMovie handy? I want to try, and it's fun. But really, it's with so many tools coming out now, it's so entertaining. It's funny. I was trying to find this old plugin I used 15 years ago the other day. It was like, I'm Googling it. There's like not even like a record of it. I finally found like some obscure PDF. I'm like, oh, it got sold to these. I got to install After Effects 6.5 to use.
Oh man.
It's like,
did it work?
No, it didn't work.
I have
to like boot up my cheese grater Mac from 2007, and like, it was just this one thing. I'm like, I've never seen anything else do that thing. But I think that's every day is different for me.
That's awesome. So I've got a kind of an off-the-wall question that may possibly determine how people view you for the rest of your life. So no pressure.
Oh.
You ready? You ready for this one? All right. Quick reference to GoldenEye in 64. We're getting serious. We're digging in deep here.
Can't play Odd Job. No proxy mine.
No proxy mines. What a cheap shot. So if you had one like go-to game mode to pick between slappers only, lasers, or golden gun, what would it be?
Golden Gun.
Golden gun?
Golden Gun.
Why?
It's not even close. Because License to Kill is the best way to play. So my preferred mode already is License to Kill, where everything's Golden Gun.
Yep.
So I mean, first of all, what kind of person says lasers? Slappies are arguable for like that's a treat. That's kind of different.
Yeah,
Mode,
spicing it up a little bit.
No, at that point you're playing a game where you're just playing tag. Like you should call the game tag. Like it's like but it's kind of like a fun because when I was playing N64 a lot, that's when I was in college because I graduated in 01.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you probably because you're in East Tennessee and you guys are nice people, you won't put this on the podcast, but we were high as balls. That's the only time. That's we're smoking weed every day. In
Note for cutting.
Yeah, it's like when you're in Alaska, that's what you do. And so if you're high enough, Slappy's like, oh, that's kind of funny, But if like the License to Kill is the best way to go, unless someone if someone gets the clob, it's a little like But the regular mode's fun too. But yeah, to me those lasers were weird in that game.
Nice. Yeah. Golden Gun, our producer Ryan and I were discussing before the show, and that was both of our votes as well.
Was Ryan born when GoldenEye was out?
I'm pretty sure. Ryan, were you born when GoldenEye was out?
Came at 97, I think, 98.
Yeah. So I had the fortunate opportunity of having two older brothers. There's 4 years in between each of us, so 8 years between me and my oldest. So I had all of the prime, pristine shows, media, whatever, for 8 years ahead of.
You got indoctrinated.
I did. So plenty of GoldenEye matches, lots of sad, crying times.
Tried to play the other day. Problem is, it's better finding an old SD TV and plug in the RCAs. You plug in RCAs to like an HD TV, it looks terrible.
Yeah, they've got some pretty cool like converters and stuff now. But
no, we put a couple emulators together, and it was all right. It wasn't quite the same. It felt like for some reason. I don't know. I mean, it's because my guys I played it with are like 1,000 miles away now. So I'm like, looking at the person I'm playing with, he's like 24 and I'm 42. I'm like, man, this is
get out of here. leave now.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Chris, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the podcast. Just kind of wrapping up now. What are some things that you've kind of got coming up down the pipeline, whether that's, personal projects you've been working on, different things at Crafty Apes, anything you want to share on that realm?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on some personal stuff I'm directing and producing. I can't get into it at the moment, but that's where a lot of what I'm creatively moving forward towards right now. I'm talking to a few different people that are in different areas of the industry. I think I'm excited to sort of like almost rewrite a playbook on how to approach production. It's not a complete overhaul. It's just, I think there's tools now, like we were talking about there's certain tools people use they don't expect to, like, oh, actually it works over here. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking that as we see this convergence now of, game engines, VFX, film, that we're seeing, the stuff in Unreal is just incredible. Now as we continue to move towards that, what are some of the actual, not technical, but more conceptual ways to do this and ways to use it? And I think then we take machine learning, for example. And so I think we think of the traditional way of making a visual piece, a movie, TV show, what have you, commercials. I think there's going to be newer ways to approach this that are going to really make a huge difference in how we execute. And what I mean by that is I was always, I came down from Alaska, ignorant, like, oh, I'm in the lower 48, I want to make movies. I thought movies would be like how I picture, like, the German military in the year 1890. It's just regimented, like, everyone, it's like, and I was so amazed at the absolute chaos of it. From music videos to high-end movies. What actually really appeals to my type of personality is allows me to thrive in chaos, but I was expecting something so different. And I realized it's so hard, it's such a controlled chaos that it's just funny because what I'm going to say is going to sound like the opposite of imaginative curiosity, but I don't see it that way. Is I think it actually opens it up. But there was the tactical planning that goes into most movies and shows is kind of underwhelming, in my opinion. And it's because and the highest end shows though have it. Big like Marvel, they previs everything. They know what they're doing. I want more of that. I think finding a way to make a movie before you make the movie, between previs, using game engines, things like that. You're going to have to include audio as part of it. You're going to have to include a certain amount of automation in this. Is going to allow you to, let's just imagine 5 years now, whatever. Luke Thompson goes to make a project. Now, could you see a world where he has some kind of service where in one night, for example, he makes a 3-page scene, and in one night, he's able to either record himself or just based off the dialogue, have a computer do naturalistic voices and create an entire scene. It's like, say, animated, for example, but enough for him to see what this feels like. And does this feel boring? Does it feel interesting? And maybe automatically like detect the mood of the scene to start. And all this has to be tweakable, but just to start, to set an underscore to it.
Yeah.
And like, what is the mood of this? What kind of and so that's one thing. Now, because what that's going to allow is, okay, say you go back and forth on that, and that becomes sort of the new development period. Say that's fairly cheap to do, so that studios, for example, can make their own movies before they make the movie. And they can make these low-res versions of them and sort of figure out, is this interesting? Maybe get to the point where they test screen it to see, So
yeah.
At that point, when you have like an action plan, and there's nothing to say you can't like go off this plan or, as you learn, it rationalizes some of it so that when you actually go in to shoot, you have a tactical plan. You're not just shooting a bunch of random footage that you're hoping the editor rescues later, which you do see a lot of. And I understand why some people, would be against this because it's going to, if it goes too far, it would over rationalize creativity and imagination. A lot of times those happy accidents are what make movies. This would be a tool. So, but then imagine how you're able to go in and plan the proper way to do this. Like everyone now is hot on, the stage, volumetric, the XR, with very, very few people able to pull it off because you're live compositing with lights and, you're basically like a caveman with, no thumb, like you think all the tools we have in Nuke and all that stuff. And now you're on stage trying to get lights to read the game engine lighting properly, but they're analog devices. So what they say they're doing versus what they're actually is just, I've seen it where you're looking at the volumetric screen going, wow, it looks like a terrible composite. But everyone there, you got a lot of people there doing the Emperor's New Clothes thing where they're like, this looks amazing. And you're like no one would ever final this shot. If I just grab this monitor and I send it to one of my artists, like, would you final this? They'd be like, no, the blacks don't match. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so these tools are all coming along. They're all very exciting. But, if you're able to plan more, to rationalize it a bit more, you can become so much more efficient. And it's the inefficiencies that, I think lead to, a lot of VFX, one of the problems when people talk about how hard of an industry it is, what they're talking about is that it's very hard to go on a creative exploration for somebody else. You're basically playing a game where you're like, Chris, I spy something in my head. And I'm like, is it a animal, plant? And you're like, and you're playing that kind of game with, a lot of times clients will, and that's the frustrating part about it is they'll be like something cool. And you're like, all right, like a magical thing. No, not that kind of cool. The other kind of cool. Oh.
Not descriptive at all.
Yeah. Trying to, which sometimes can be really fun when you have the right partner, when their attitude's fun, there's certain people are really fun to create with. But when you see like VFX artists get frustrated, it comes down to this sort of, the director didn't have a clear vision, or whoever the client is didn't have a clear vision, and they're like, hey, I want you to create something that's in my head, but I can't see it, and I can barely describe it to you, but I'll know it when I see it. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, that's an impossible task.
Fun to play with your 6-year-old, but it can be very frustrating because the more people produce things, because we're called artists, but what we really are craftsmen, and which is a combination. And so imagine it's like if I were saying, okay, you're going to build a house for me, contractor Luke. And you're like, hey, let's check out this driveway. I'm like, I hate it. You're like, well, what do you want? I want it better and cooler. Well, do you have any notes? No, that sucks. Okay, so you pour another one. Nope. And so after a while, even if you're being paid for it every time, it emotionally takes a toll. The transactions are rational. And so I think the more you can at least rationalize some of this so that, you're able to throw a bunch of things in front of directors quickly and they've seen what the pitfalls are. We already know how we're going to shoot it, do this. And of course, you're always open to do whatever the hell you want. But this is just a way to sort of rationalize it. Because, most movies aren't scoring 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not to say that's the end all be all, but a lot of movies, have problems. And a lot of them, I'm convinced, could have been solved by making the movie before you made the movie.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I'm constantly thinking about is how to use all these tools that are coming together to change the way we do it. And I think it'll come out of lower budget projects. So I'm working on some not 100% guerrilla, like maybe stuff that actually broadcasts, but nowhere near normal budgets because I can now take some risks and try some things.
Yeah.
And that's
awesome.
I find that rewarding.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I'm really excited to see kind of what comes out of that with your experimenting, and use the term imaginative curiosity. And I think I can resonate a lot with that because it's healthy. Like, it's an exploration, and every day I think if approached the right way can be, because it's like, I don't know what today's going to be with this new technology, but if it leads me down 6 different hallways, that gets me to some other thing,
it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of you guys, I've thought of your business a few times because it's like, if you do your business really well, you're going to put yourself out of business because there's only so many elements you can shoot. And then I'm sure you guys have debate about this all the time, is like, when you become the best company ever, which you are now and have been for a while, the best company ever at providing VFX stock elements.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Don't let it go to your head. You've really only beat out heartbeats. Okay. Yeah. No, but you guys you're doing something that we all talked about for years. We're like, oh yeah, someone should out there should blah, blah, and the fact that, some random dudes from Haiti and Tennessee got together,
it sounds like a party, if you ask me.
It feels like a Margaritaville cover band or something. And it's so cool what you guys have done, but I've thought about that one day and I'm like, man, because I saw you guys were growing. I'm like, how are they growing? Because there's more VFX than ever, more VFX companies, but eventually either everyone's bought this or it's ended up on CG Persia to the point where I'm like, I wonder if sales begin to dip because, you can replace it. Like, hey, we got new fire now, 60K fire, and I'm like, maybe they get into VDB production, which I saw you guys did too. I'm like, they're going to have to get into like Turbo Squid assets soon. They're going to have to hire a 3D team somewhere with, I don't know what you guys are doing. I will say that I'm just thinking about if I were Rodolph and Luke and the guys, like, if you guys are going to hit by a meteor tomorrow and someone said, here's ActionVFX, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm not moving to Tennessee. My family's here. It must be really fun for you guys to imaginatively come up, because, it is, but on a certain level, frightening. Because you're like, well, no, we're gonna go out of business unless we innovate. So you're forced to, in 10 years from now, ActionVFX might be a Python coding machine learning company. Who knows? But it's interesting to start off with, and so when I do actually think about you guys a decent amount in terms of like, I wonder because I know you guys are smart and work hard. So what innovative thing are they going to come up with that's going to keep them going and create a new revenue stream? That's
thank you. I definitely appreciate you saying that. That means a ton. And that's always something that's on the top of our mind too, of we've been in 2D stock. I think we'll to some extent always be in 2D stock, but if we kind of hold the terminology we use loosely and realize that, like, what are we actually doing as far as like providing a solution, and that solution is tools for artists, then that gives us a lot more freedom, instead of saying like, we are 2D stock and we can't experiment outside that box. I think that's going to manifest itself a couple different ways. At this point of recording, we're coming up on 5,000 individual assets of our library, and there's a lot that we can do with that. The majority of that is organic, and so we will constantly be updating new things, rolling out new like organically filmed assets, so real fire, real explosions, all that fun stuff. But I think we're going to see a transition, especially over the next couple years, as we start to delve into converting all of those assets to be game ready assets in Unity and Unreal. So that's actually something we've already been doing. We have a couple things in the works on that front. I can't get ultra specific, but we are.
No, I don't want you to reveal anything. I don't want anyone to do it.
I want to reveal everything.
I can see a lot of customers. One of the things I thought of was like, because you have this reputation of having all these amazing elements, which you guys might already do this, you start to become a provider of custom shoots. Because we do a lot of custom shoots in-house, but a lot of them are super trailer park. It's like our red with a taped up green screen against the fridge. You're like, I just a piece of dust, and it works for our purpose. But so many times, you think of custom things that are necessary, and a lot of, it's astounding how many VFX people, because they're supposed to be like creating what a camera sees, don't know how to use the damn camera. And so, everyone's like, well, that's red, did it hit record? I'm like, is it an auto? Did you expose it? They're like, what do you mean? Like, is it in focus?
It's a red. I'll just fix it later, right? It's like,
no, it's crazy. They're like, I got this black magic thing. It shoots this, weird log space. I'm like,
it says magic, so it should be fine.
Yeah, no. And so, a lot of VFX companies, are not great at shooting elements. Mm-hmm. And so I can see that as a custom solution for companies or even movies, where because it's easier to offload the budget there, where it's like, hey, we need an explosion thing over here. And, our special effects guys are busy and, so can I outsource to these guys to go shoot it, in Tennessee, where apparently there's no laws against blowing stuff up, so.
Free for all. It's the Wild West out here.
No, coming from Alaska, that's like, we talked about, we could shoot really big explosions there. It's like, do we have a blue screen or black screen big enough? Yeah. Like, no. But yeah, no, I was thinking like that. I bet that could be a good revenue stream. Mm-hmm. Who knows? But anyway, I'm very excited to see what you guys are doing. I really mean that, because it's really what got you to one scale, which is this. Obviously, you can't live on forever. So it's like, what innovations are going to come next?
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Nah, thanks, man. And like I said, I really appreciate that. That means a ton coming for you. Extremely excited for your success. Not just the past 10 years, which is a huge celebration, but moving forward, seeing what you guys are going to do next, how you're going to just continue to scale and expand and dominate into everything. Because I'm confident you guys are going to just, do great at whatever path. As you said, that general plan of like, kind of have a rough idea of how it probably ends with world domination. Let's be honest. But
there'll be a lot of failure on the way, and it's really definitely not world domination. But no, I think excitement. And without that falling on our face, it won't be entertaining. Mm-hmm. But it's I think we're excited. I think if with a healthy fear, knowing that, and luckily I know this is part of my dad's philosophy is I have 3 brothers who spend a lot of time telling me how not awesome I am, and that if you keep a certain humble nature to you, and you allow people, you don't build those walls that keep the good things out, because a lot of times the good things are not good things on the surface. Like like going to the doctor sucks, but it's a good thing in the long run. Kind of like, or the thing I never do, which is exercising, which sucks, but very good in the long run. And I think that healthy fear of like, without the kind that makes you lose too much sleep of like, hey, we got to keep thinking hard. We got to be clever. And, there's not necessarily a sword of Damocles over your head, but a bit of a sword of Damocles, maybe like a pocket knife of Damocles or something, that I think will keep us innovative. And who knows what we'll transform into, I'm still an 80s kid waiting for my hoverboard. So maybe get into physics. But
that's awesome. Closest thing I've seen so far is a one wheel. I don't know if you got to play around on one of those at all.
Oh, I'm pigeon-toed. My coordination's terrible. Growing up in Alaska, I tried to get on a hockey rink with skates on. I just stood there and went backwards. Like,
well, then how are you going to ride that hoverboard? You got to prep for when they're ready.
No, it's we call it Chris mode, which makes it just extra the automatic mode. It's like, it's like using auto aim in Goldeneye.
Okay.
Totally
so
cheap.
You're just strapped in. Yeah, you can't lose. The deck is stacked. Awesome. Chris, thanks so much for this chat. Again, just kind of wrapping up here. How can people follow you, whether that's through personal Instagram accounts, company things? Where can people find out more about you and Crafty Apes?
I mean, I honestly don't really do that shit too much. It's I don't. It's like
I love it.
I got Facebook. We're friends on there, but I don't even have enough time for the friends and family I do have. So I tried to stop creating new friends. It's like, which is a joke, obviously, but it's like, I don't think on social media I have much to offer people except for like, George Carlin memes,
If you ask me, your meme game is pretty high.
Those are all stolen from VFXmemes.com. So I'm basically like a good Redditor. I just take credit for someone else's work.
Nice. I love it. And yeah, you can find out more about Crafty Apes, of course, at your website and kind of the different services you offer as well. So once again, Chris LeDoux from Crafty Apes, thanks so much for joining us for this episode, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Luke. It's good to talk to you again.